My dad bought a candy shop up in the Black Hills, and then when he took possession of the shop, he was about to throw this out, and then he opened it up and saw what was inside.
And then he gave it to you?
Yeah, I was searching in the garage for something to take to the Roadshow, and then I came across this.
This is a salesman's case, so this was the full product line of everything that he had to offer. So the salesman would take it around to the different candy shops and let people pick out what they wanted to carry in their stores. And so we see a really tremendous variety of stuff here. Some of the products I don't even think they make anymore. We think this is probably from the late 1950s, based on the packaging. And at auction, we think it's really conservative, that it would probably bring at least $500 to $700.
Okay.
And I think most of us wouldn't be surprised if the people who collect salesman samples and vintage candy would go crazy for something like this. So if it went for more than that, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
My sister was a artist, or is an artist actually still, but at the time she was living up in Northern California, and she became friends with another artist named David Gilhooly and his wife Camille, and he used to come over for dinner, and instead of bringing a bottle of wine or a cheese tray or something, he would bring one of his little pieces of art that he had made, and I was visiting one time and I thought they were kind of fun, so she gave me a couple of them.
So here I brought you dessert.
Dessert, that's right.
I brought you a chocolate-covered frog on top of a cupcake or a chocolate-covered beaver. It's so clever. David Gilhooly is such an interesting character. He passed away about 4 years ago. And he was part of the original California funk movement. And he was, in the 1960s, at UC Davis, the assistant to the very, very famous Robert Arneson. And Robert Arneson was a sculptor and a potter, and along with some others decided to kind of rebel against what was believed to be the fine art, which was by then very non-representational. Mm-hmm. So things that were so abstract for so long and so well regarded and so posh, they wanted none of that. They wanted to go back to figural sculpting, but not just figural sculpting, goofy figural sculpting. And then once it was goofy, it became very sophisticated again. Gilhooly would do things like a lot of food, for example, and he would adapt food and make it kind of crazy and give it these really bright glazes. And then he went on to frogs, which always reminds me of Monty Python. He's got all these little crunchy frogs. And so like this, he would cover them in chocolate sometimes, and other times only with really bright glazes. So even though these really look like chocolate, they are indeed glazed ceramic. This funk movement is this reaction against what has been established. It's also political, it's also a little bit angry. So with these frogs or other animals, Gilhooly made a lot of statements. I would like to show how they're signed here. It's a very easy signature to read. It's just scratched in, and these two are signed the same, and they're dated 1977. I would think that at auction, these would probably have a pre-auction estimate each of about $1,000 to $1,500.
For a chocolate frog. Okay. You think my sister's going to want them back?
This is my 179-year-old Pickle. I've inherited this, and the Pickle was grown inside the bottle by my ancestor in Burke County, Pennsylvania in 1845.
Well, you solved one question that we had. It was like, how'd you get the pickle inside?
My ancestor either put the small cucumber in there or maybe even the blossom of the cucumber inside and grew the pickle inside the bottle, and then put the pickling brine in there. The pickle is inherited by the youngest sibling. So my father gave it to me, and I'll give it to our daughter.
It definitely is unique. James and I were thinking this is probably the first pickle we've ever appraised.
But it's the finest pickle we've ever been in.
Absolutely. So we noticed when we were looking at it, there are some markings on the bottle.
It says George Smith and Company, Druggist, Philadelphia. It's an early American bottle. It's probably around mid-1800s. We looked up the maker, And it is a known Philadelphia maker. His brother, John Smith, was a druggist in the 1830s and 1840s.
Mm-hmm.
This company is still around. So we're pretty confident the bottle's authentic. It's from the right period, around 1845 or so, which fits family lore. The tough question is value. It's a great bottle. If it did not have a pickle inside it, it'd be probably $150, $200 bottle.
Okay.
If we were to be able to prove that it was possibly the oldest or one of the oldest, that really takes it up a couple of notches in terms of a collector wanting it. So that could elevate it to about $500 to $700 at auction.
Very nice.
It would be the kind of thing that would create a newsworthy story, and then it brings out a lot of other collectors and bidders. So it's the type of thing that could actually do quite well.
And that's okay, but it's not for sale anyway.
Good. It's a very cool piece. Thank you so much for bringing it in, because it's one of the more unusual things I've seen.
This is an ice cream cone that was displayed at my parents' Daisy Queen in Haytime, Missouri. They owned this drive-in restaurant from December of 1959 until May of 1982. And in the year of 1960, my dad was working, and some of the girls that worked for him noticed that a customer that had pulled up to the north window looked like Elvis Presley. He goes, "No, it can't be." So he walked up to the window and raised it and said, "Excuse me, sir, can you settle an argument? These girls think you're Elvis Presley. Would you tell them you're not?" He goes, "No, sir, I am Elvis Presley." He pulled out his billfold, showed him his driver's license. It said Elvis Presley, Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow.
He had flown from California to St. Louis and rented a Cadillac, him and his cousin, Gene Smith. The reason they flew into St. Louis was to avoid the fans and media at the airport in Memphis. And they'd stop for lunch at my parents' drive-in restaurant. While he was there, my dad got to talking to him. He said he was very polite, and he asked for his autograph. And this was on display in the Daisy Queen. And Elvis signed it with a grease pencil that my dad had. And he looked at it, he said, "I don't really like the signature. Can I do it again?" And my dad said, "Do it as many times as you want to." So he signed it twice. Wow. And it was on display in our Daisy Queen for several years, probably 8 or 10 years. So the grease and the smoke from the food being cooked kind of discolored it. And through the years, people that worked for us, they also signed their names on there.
Do you know exactly when it was, 1960?
It was June 29th of 1960.
Based on that date, 29th of June, Elvis had just finished filming G.I. Blues.
Yeah.
So that came out around November 1960. Okay. He'd actually just come out of the Army. This was his first movie after coming out of the Army, so there was a lot of fuss about him. As you say, there are 2 signatures on him, which is very, very cool. Very unusual to have something signed with such a big, bold signature. And it's really nice because both of them are very, very visible. Did your father manage to ever get a photograph taken at the time with Elvis?
While Elvis was there, my dad says, "Would you stay a few more minutes, let me run home, get a camera, and come back?" And Elvis says, "As long as the crowds don't start forming, I'll wait a little bit longer." So my dad rushes home, he gets the camera, jumps back in his car, races back towards the Daisy Queen. Before he gets to the Daisy Queen on Highway 61, that Cadillac goes flying by towards Memphis. He said estimated 80 miles an hour.
So I guess the word got out pretty quick.
Yes.
The piece itself is quite a collectible piece as well. As you said, it's an advertising piece, and it probably dates to the late 1940s. It's painted wood pulp, and it is the safety cup. The safety cup was cone which had a cut-off bottom. Let's just say it didn't have the Elvis Presley signatures on it. Even as just an advertising piece, even in this condition, which is it's a little bit worn, I would say it's probably $800 to $1,200. But if you add in the 2 signatures, at auction, a conservative estimate, I would say somewhere in the region of $3,000 to $5,000.
Okay.
Very collectible indeed.
Yeah, that's great.
My grandparents were on their honeymoon trip on the Carpathia in 1912 when the Carpathia went to rescue the Titanic passengers. And my grandfather kept a detailed diary.
So it's an eyewitness account of picking up
from the
people.
Carpathia standpoint, picking up the survivors. And his bride, my grandmother Mabel Fenwick, had a Kodak camera on board, and she took all these photos she took.
There's the iceberg. Is that the iceberg?
Well, several experts have told us that it's a double-peaked iceberg. It was an odd shape, and that's the shape that was described as being the iceberg that hit. Right.
So you've got the eyewitness photographs, you've got the eyewitness diaries, then you have the letters that were written to your relatives from the survivors who stayed in their cabins.
Yes.
And then you had this.
And this is probably the most interesting and unique piece. This is a hardtack biscuit from a Titanic lifeboat.
Yeah, that's really pretty remarkable. We've had a lot of Titanic stuff here. The peak Titanic market was there when the film came out.
Yes.
But what you've got is the original photographs, and I understand that these have been taken, that they've been used and reproduced
published in many books.
Right. I'd advise you to copyright the photographs and make sure that you retain those copyrights.
And not to eat the biscuit.
And don't eat the biscuit, right. It's hard to place a value on it, but I would say that in terms of what the Titanic stuff has been selling for and whether the market is going to continue like it has been, $50,000, $75,000 for all of this stuff, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Very good.
Well, I found these in an old mining town in Colorado. Actually, the town's Leadville. I'd buy old houses and fix them up, and did that for many years. But this was the only one I ever found a stash of cans that were left there by the workers who built the house. Part of the house was made out of log, and the workers actually hewed the logs out right on the job site. And this was done in 1882. That the wood chips and parts under the house were like 6 inches thick. Mm-hmm. And when they would eat their lunches, they just threw the cans under instead of taking them somewhere else. If they landed on the wood chips, they were preserved. If they landed in the dirt, they were a little pile of rust.
That's amazing.
But I found actually 66 cans under this house, but the mice had eaten the labels off of about 25 of them.
So these are your best examples.
Those are the best ones. I do have some duplicates of a few,
right?
But most of them are one of a kind,
right?
And there's 3 that have dates on them,
right?
And
this is one of them actually.
Yes, that has the oldest date. Registered 1876.
Actually, you found some other documentation. This is interesting. There's a photograph here from a history book that shows miners tossing cans, and this particular can right here, this bean can, is exactly the same as this Boston baked bean can.
Yes, it is. I just found that a few months ago. It's the first time I've ever even seen any of these cans.
The tin can label applied to Kansas in this manner was first done in 1876. Is that correct?
That's right.
According to your research?
From other people that I've talked to, they say about the earliest they've ever seen is around 1890. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of exciting to have one that's 14 years older than that.
Right.
I've taken them to museums, I've shown them to different people, and they just shake their heads and say, we've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, no, and I haven't either. Well, first of all, the graphics are just fantastic.
They are.
And the colors have been preserved beautifully. Chromolithography is the process that allowed this vivid color. But usually most of the chromolithography we see has survived is in books where the pages have been closed and no light has gotten to them. Some of these cans would sell in the range of $400 to $800 a piece. And if you average out the collection, I was doing some quick calculating, you have to be looking at a collection that should sell in the range for $10,000 to $14,000.
Pretty good for discarded food cans.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing them down.
Thank you.
It was in my great-great-grandmother's possession. Back in the 1800s, these candies were given out, and she did not like the taste of them. So she would put them in the jar and start saving them, and when people found out that, they gave her more.
First of all, I think it's fantastic.
It's cool.
We have a pretty basic glass jar with a metal lid that's full of this Valentine's candy, primarily heart-shaped, but some others, most likely by the New England Confectionery Company.
Oh.
And you may know the New England Confectionery Company by its acronym of NECO, or Necco wafers.
Okay.
So the New England Confectionery Company first introduced the candy to the country in around 1866.
Okay.
And they were called conversation starters or conversation candy because they had these sayings on them. One of the more prominent pieces of candies got Grover Cleveland.
Yeah.
So Grover Cleveland was president of the United States. He was actually the first president to serve 2 non-consecutive turns, 1885 and then again in 1893. Of course I will, is one heart. No doubt of it, with all my heart. And then, will you marry me? No, don't be shy there, right?
Yeah, right.
Hope and smile. Keep your eye open. So there you go. Always be vigilant. Maybe Mr. or Mrs. Right is out there somewhere. This is a tricky one because there's no collecting category of candy from the 1900s. There's nobody that really has a lot of this because it's mostly eaten or thrown away or whatever. So to have this many collected is quite unique. To the right person, of which that would be folk art collectors, candy people, Valentine's people. There's a lot of people that would think this is really fun. An auction estimate, $800 to $1,000.
Okay. All right. I can deal with that. That's actually a relief. Okay.
Relief because?
Because I was afraid I was going to, it'd be too valuable. I'd be afraid to own it.
Precious, but not so precious that you have to lose sleep over it, okay?
I love it. That is, thank you.
I'm currently fixing my grandparents' home, and I came across a very heavy box in the attic. I brought it downstairs and opened it up, and I found this cabinet closed.
Right.
And I opened it and found all this food in here wrapped in
the Chicago newspaper.
Yeah, Chicago newspaper, World's Fair paper. I was really surprised. So I found out that my uncle lost his apartment or home during the Depression because of the money problems. So he had to move back home. And everything went in the attic.
Okay.
It just was frozen in time in the attic until I came across it.
Now, these are some of the spices and various tins that you found wrapped in these items,
all
correct?
Wrapped up, yes. I want to preserve this for my family.
Great. Well, a couple of things, and I want to use this as an example. You can see here that this is menu sugar, which is a great advertising piece, but you can see that the box is a little crumpled here, and it does have the sugar in it. Now, with all of these items, what you want to do is empty the product, okay? Having the product in there will only incite bugs to greatly attract them. So you do want to get rid of that because that will help preserve the integrity of the piece. Once you do that, and you can see here, if you go slowly and open this up, you can get a piece of cardboard in here that will help open this up and help preserve the piece, because that's where your value is going to be is in the condition and the quality of some of the graphics that are on these items. And I would put an estimate on this of about $800 to $1,200 for the whole group, and it could go higher because of the condition.
That's great.
Great.
Oh, he'd be happy.
Yes,
he's up there watching this.
This is a print from my mother's side of the family. My great uncle was a butcher, and he and his wife owned a deli in Madison, Wisconsin. And so this hung in their butcher shop or deli for years upon years. I don't know much about it other than it's a lithoprint from the 30s.
It's certainly appropriate for a butcher shop.
Yeah.
Let me just say straight from the top that if you ask any of my friends or colleagues here on the Roadshow, they're going to tell you that I'm full of baloney. So this poster does have a specific resonance for me.
Okay.
So I'm very happy to see it. In fact, it's not really a poster, though, is it?
No, I don't think it is.
It's what we call a die cut. You can't see it because you have it so nicely framed, but the piece is on cardboard that has been cut out in the shape of the image, and it would have been standing up as a point of purchase in the store. And it really is a fascinating piece of American cultural and culinary history. Oscar Mayer, as a company, is one of those firms that really is part of the American collective consciousness. I think the company is most famous for 3 things. You know what those are?
I'll let you share with me what those are.
I think it's the Wienermobile. I think it's the song, I Wish I Were an Oscar Mayer Wiener.
Of course.
And I think it's a song, My Bologna Has a First Name. It's O-S-C-A-R.
Yes.
You know that song.
Exactly.
It is a lithograph, and it's done in this really extraordinary Art Deco stylization. At least the typography and the background is very Art Deco. And the image itself is as succulent and tasty as one could possibly want. This is from 1931. That predates the Wienermobile, which was unleashed on the roads of America in 1936.
Okay.
The company itself goes back to around 1900, actually a little bit earlier than 1900. Most of these things were done anonymously by advertising agencies. Even without knowing the artist, it's still a very, very desirable piece. I consulted with some of my colleagues, both at the collectibles table and people who are very familiar with this kind of advertising, and I asked them what they thought it was worth. The people at the collectibles table thought a die-cut advertisement like this at auction might fetch between $400 and $600.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, that's very interesting, because I see an image like this and it really is a wonderful food image.
Okay.
I think at a well-publicized auction, this could fetch between $2,000 and $3,000. And I think it's just a very interesting way to look at how the antique market is sort of very segmented, and certain people in one field might not pay as much as somebody just looking to decorate either a new butcher shop or their dining room.
Well, it goes back a few years, maybe about 65. I happened to be working with my father one day on a milk route. We were in the dairy business. There's a gentleman by the name of Mr. Harvey that owned a little market in a small village, Waltz, Michigan. He was getting up in age and he was going to be selling his store. Every time I went in his store to deliver milk, I would kind of look up on the shelf and see this spice box. I guess I just felt I had to own it, so I just asked him if there was a chance I could buy this spice box. And so we made a deal. I don't really remember if it was $10 or if it was $30. I do remember that I would pay Mr. Harvey a few dollars every week until it was paid off.
I gotta ask you, what was it for this piece to attract a 10-year-old boy?
If you just look at the color, the uniqueness of the piece, I was just fascinated by it.
When you set it on the table, the first thing I noticed was how brilliant the color is. After 38 years of being in this business, I can tell you this is not the first countertop spice rack I've seen out of a country store. I've seen a lot of them, but most of them look like somebody beat them up with a hammer and all the paint is gone, or lots of times they'd just be painted black, and then they would have the stencil decoration. These panels here, the rooster and the hens, and these ships, those were done by a machine process called lithography.
Yes.
And they would have done that probably before this piece was assembled on a flat piece of tin. The thing that blows your mind, and I've said this a million times, in this business, when an object talks to you from across the room, that's the best kind. You've got to walk over there and look at it. Date-wise, my thought would be I talked with a colleague probably from the 1880s, maybe up to around 1900 or so.
Do you want to taste some of the spices that have been in it for 65 years?
Probably not.
They still smell really good.
I bet they do.
They do.
Oh my gosh, those are the same spices that were in it when you bought it?
Oh yeah, my wife almost threw these out, and I said, oh my gosh. So what I did do is I scooped them out and put the spices in plastic bags.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, every time I walk by this and smell that cinnamon,
makes you think about going back to that old store, I bet.
It does.
The people out there that like to recreate country stores, they are driven heavily by the big boy with the most toy.
Oh yes.
Sort of motivation. Easily, I could see in a retail setting, the price would probably be around $4,000 to $6,000.
Interesting. Let's see, if we work that out, let's call it $30. It worked out quite well. But the sentimental value truly is, for me, is what it's all about.